The opening paragraph of the Antichrist Nietzsche writes, "We are Hyperboreans. We know well enough how remote our place is. Neither by land nor by sea will you find the road to the Hyperboreans. Even Pindar in his day knew that much about us. Beyond the north, beyond ice, beyond death, our life, our happiness." Nietzsche's philosophy is filled with references to self overcoming and the rejection of decadence. Among his most striking images is the previous invocation of the Hyperboreans, a mythical race mentioned by the Greek poet Pindar. This concept serves as a metaphor for those who rise above the weakness of modern life, or for those more esoterically minded people, a call back to our Hyperborean root race ancestors. By embracing strength, self mastery, and a life affirming ethos, and by exploring Pindar's depiction of the Hyperboreans and Nietzsche's adaptation of this idea, we can understand how the ancient myth became a powerful symbol of aristocratic radicalism and philosophical elitism. Pindar was one of the most revered lyrical poets of ancient Greece. He described the Hyperboreans as a blessed race living in a land beyond the north wind, according to his Pythian ode. Neither by ship nor by foot would you find the marvelous road to the assembly of the Hyperboreans. And so, how does one find this mythical road? If it's not by physical means, it must be by other processes. And this line emphasizes that Hyperborea is not just a location, but an almost divine state of existence. In Olympian Ode 3, Pindar elaborates on this idyllic life. The muse is no stranger to their customs. Everywhere songs and lyres echo to Apollo's delight, and dancers whirl with the sound of the flute. Here Apollo is a mention, and Apollo was said to winter in Hyperborea. He was their chief god, their chief deity, which makes perfect sense because Hyperborea is the land of the eternal midnight sun. And so, of course, they would worship the sun god himself. Now, here, Hyperborea represents a paradise untouched by suffering, old age, or war. It's a place of eternal music, joy, and divine favor. Unlike ordinary mortals, the Hyperboreans exist outside of the cycle of decay and are immune to the struggles of this mundane world. The ancient Greeks often associated Hyperborea with an idealized golden age, a time before corruption, where men lived in harmony with the gods. In this sense, Pindar's Hyperboreans serve as a poetic counterpart to Hesiod's description of a lost golden race. While humans have descended into a moral and physical decay, the Hyperboreans remained untouched, existing in a state of eternal excellence. The concept of Hyperborea was linked to the mystical traditions of later Greek thought. Some esoteric traditions saw Hyperborea as the origin of wisdom, a place where sacred knowledge resided and where initiates sought enlightenment. This connection between Hyperborea and divine knowledge would later echo in Nietzsche's philosophical reimaging of the term. Centuries later, Nietzsche repurposed the Hyperborean myth to represent his own ideal of the Ubermensch, the superior individual who transcends the mediocrity of modern society. By aligning himself with the Hyperboreans, Nietzsche signals that he and those who follow his path belong to an elite class, a class of thinkers and warriors and philosophers, those who have rejected the decadence of modern society. Unlike Pindar's paradise, however, Nietzsche's Hyperborea is not a given state, but a goal. It is not a frozen state in a faraway land, but an internal struggling, an eternal Kampf, something that must be attained through personal struggle. The Hyperborean is one who has left behind the slave morality of modern liberalism and the herd instinct of the modern world. And instead of retreating into nihilism, they affirm life and embrace the eternal winter as a path to greatness. For Nietzsche, Hyperborea is not a mythical geographical location, but a state of being. It is a realm for those who reject herd mentality and refuse to be constrained by conventional morality, as we see in our own world, our own decadent society, where being a man of pity is the highest of all achievements. Do you pity Gollum? Do you pity those who shriek in their shackles? It's a pity that he didn't kill Gollum. And I agree with that statement instead of giving a counter argument to it. Why should we pity those who follow the norm? Why should we assume that because you are succeeding in a pitiful society that you're somehow better or somehow grand or somehow a higher level of achiever than your contemporaries? I see men who are philosophically more astute than 99%, 99.99% of all people who have ever lived, and they don't get access to being professors of philosophy. They're barred. Why? Because they push the narrative. They break away from the modern constructs. They push the boundaries and they explore areas of philosophy, of morality that are taboo. And so they are a pariah. It does not mean that they are unter, they're below, that they're less quality because they're not succeeding in the Hillic dominated world that we find ourselves in today. No, actually, it's the opposite. And you can find these types of individuals in almost every field, not just philosophy. People who are not succeeding in the Hylic dominated culture that we find ourselves in. It's all a reflection of their value. It's a reflection of our society's reluctance to acknowledge their value and their worth. And so for Nietzsche, Hyperborean would also embrace the struggle of existence, turning hardship into strength rather than succumbing. You have to fight, not in the physical sense. We're not fighting tooth and claw anymore. It's a worldview struggle. It's a metaphysical struggle. It's a struggle of wills, of voices, of opinions, of worldview. And even if the fight seems hopeless, even if it is checkmate, if I knew it was checkmate, if I knew there was no use, I'd still fight. Because fighting is just in my blood memory. It's in my will spirit. And I'm sure it is for you as well. I'm sure it is for you. If you knew that no matter what, it was checkmate, you would still fight. Because that's just what we are. It's just who we are. It's just what we do. That is what we are. We are that. And so we must affirm life in its totality. accepting suffering as an essential part of growth, rather than seeking escape in nihilism or decadence. I see it more and more as I go through life that those who lived the cushiest life, the bubble boys, the decadents, these people are weak. And I see them crack the first sign of inconvenience. If you go through life for your first 35 years without any hardships and the tables turn, I don't see these people doing well after that. I see them breaking under the pressure. Rather, for us Hyperboreans, who were born in the crucible of being involved in gate or being involved in this psyopt reality, we know it's been a battle since we could walk. We've been fighting since we can walk, and we'll continue on the struggle, no matter what happens. Believe me, I've seen a lot. I'm not down and I'm not out. And I've seen people go through a lot. And they're not down and out either. In fact, a lot of the time, that just makes the fire burn brighter within them. As Nietzsche says, we must create our own values rather than adhering to societal norms. Why would I ever adhere to the norms of this plane in the current year, in this current timeline that we've somehow been transported to by some sort of black magic? Unironically, I'll never adhere. I'll never bend the knee to these norms, no matter what is offered on the plate. I really don't care at this point. Again, we've all seen a lot now, and there's not really much to be offered in the realms of this plane. There's so much more that you could be doing and achieving rather than trying to climb to the top of the pyramid within their framework. Create your own pyramid. Create your own framework. Don't even let me tell you. Kick down the Hyperborean sandcastle if you have to and find your own form of will to power. I'm just here pointing to something I've found that helps me. Again, Nietzsche references Hyperborea again in The Will to Power. He writes, "In the collapse of morality, I define it as a movement of humanity away from Hyperborea toward a new phase of mediocrity and degeneration." So the collapse of morality led us away from Hyperborea. And so Nietzsche is saying that Hyperboreans were moral, but they had a different morality. They had a master morality, not the slave morality of the Hylics of today. And I mean, you could say, well, we are the slaves. We are the men under the boot of the controllers. And yes, I agree in the sense that that is the case. But look at the world they've created. It's a world that reflects themselves. It's not a world of symmetry and beauty and strength and will to power. Through their black magic, they've created a world of mediocrity and degeneration and asymmetry. And yes, they've got the upper hand. They use their spells and their rituals and their temptations to rally up enough power to alchemically transpose this world into what they suppose is the highest of all. But I believe it will be temporary. Nothing in this world lasts forever. There's peaks, there's falls. Civilizations are an organism, and they die. Same with moral frameworks. They're also an organism, and they'll die, and they'll become obsolete and be replaced by something new. That was the way of things. Hyperborea to Nietzsche and the will to power becomes a symbol of lost greatness, an aristocratic ideal that the modern man has abandoned in favor of comfort and conformity. The road to Hyperborea is thus a journey of self-overcoming, requiring the individual to break free from weakness and embrace their highest potential. Nietzsche talks about power. What is becoming more powerful? What is good, right? He talks about what is good. Is it becoming more powerful? What is bad? Becoming less powerful. What is joy? The feeling of becoming more powerful. Okay? That could be whatever that is for you. If you are a power lifter, that feeling of getting that weight up to a higher level. If you're an artist, if you're a musician, that feeling of mastering a new technique. For sports, it's the same. Even for gaming in this modern world, the feeling of owning somebody, it's all that same feeling, right? What is good? Feeling like you're becoming more Hyperborean. What is bad? Feeling that you're becoming less Hyperborean. That is morality for me. That can be seen as a vanguard, a prototype of his conception of the Ubermensch, the overman. Just as the Ubermensch transcends conventional morality, the Hyperboreans live beyond the reach of decadence. The Ubermensch does not rely on external divine rewards like Pindar's Hyperboreans, but instead create their own meaning and values from within. While Pindar's Hyperboreans accept the divine gift, Nietzsche's Hyperborea is something won through will and strength. The Ubermensch embraces eternal recurrence, the idea that one should live as though they would repeat their life eternally. The weak despair of this prospect, but the Hyperborean affirms it, accepting suffering and triumph as necessary parts of the cycle. Would I do this for my own life? Would it be either eternal nothingness or eternal recurrence? I would pick recurrence. Let me know what you would pick. It's an interesting topic for sure. Additionally, Nietzsche's vision of Hyperborea carries a deeper esoteric element. In his rejection of modern nihilism, he calls for a return to primordial strength, a rekindling of the Dionysian spirit that predates the weakening effects of Christian morality. The Hyperborean is not just an individual who transcends modernity, but one who reaches back to a deeper, more ancient source of power. And for me, as you've seen in my previous videos, it would be more of an Odinic source of power. Though I understand why Nietzsche goes the Dionysian route, because he was heavily wrapped up in the Greek worldview and a great admirer of that culture. And so Pindar's Hyperborea was a paradise of divine favor, music, and eternal joy, unreachable by ordinary mortals. Nietzsche, however, transformed this ancient myth into a metaphor for human greatness and the path to the Ubermensch, To be a Hyperborean in Nietzschean terms is not to live in some distant paradise, but to exist beyond the limitations of modernity, beyond the decadence, beyond the weakness, beyond the constraints of our hive mind Borgmen. The road to Hyperborea is not a physical journey, but a spiritual and physical one. It is the path of those who choose strength over submission, creation over stagnation, and the will to power over nihilism. To be a Hyperborean in the Nietzschean sense means to walk alone and to reject the easy path in a world that increasingly rewards comfort and mediocrity and conformity. The Hyperborean remains an outlier, a reminder that true greatness lies beyond the walls of civilization and in the frozen depths of those who dare to strive for it. As Nietzsche declares, we are Hyperboreans. The only question that remains is whether one has the courage to follow that snowy road.